For the past several years, Sean and I have been hosting many different retreats, and we even have our own inner circle and brotherhood. And within these experiences, we often have these very in depth conversations with men. And one of the core topics that is discussed is relationships, where a lot of these men are experiencing the same cycles and patterns. Where they may find a great relationship and they ride that wave for a bit, but then ultimately it just disintegrates and falls apart. And at the core of all of this is an underlying theme that we see throughout. And also through our conversations with women, where they have shared their biggest complaint is not actually feeling safe in the relationship, where they don't feel like they are being attuned to emotionally and spiritually, or even having any depth of presence. And this ultimately is what a woman craves in order for her to open, in order for her to surrender. And really, underneath it all is a man that does not feel safe within himself. A man that is still in a sympathetic nervous system, in a state of fight or flight, where he doesn't feel fully comfortable in his own skin, and even mirroring back some of his own insecurities, unworthiness, and all of that, which then plays into this shame spiral. And then it repeats over and over and over again. And then that all leaks into their relationships. And so today, Sean and I wanted to jump on here and really dive into this topic of relationships, and specifically speaking to the men out there that might find themselves in these same cycles and patterns and want to break it and create more intimate, connective experiences with their partners. So let's dive into it.
Let's dive in, man. Yeah, I think our big intention here is to make these things so much more clear. I think there's a lot of gray area, there's a lot of confusion, and I know personally a lot of men that will say things like, "Oh, I was doing everything right and she still left or things still fell apart," and not really knowing like, "Hey, what was the undercurrent? Like why would she leave? Why did this happen?" And this really does go back to our childhood conditioning in so many ways. I was thinking about this, and just to provide context to give some examples here, it's like we model our what we know the masculine to be from our fathers, of course, right? And from other male role models in our lives at that point, but mostly from our fathers. And when I, as a child, saw emotions start to heighten in my household, I witnessed a lot of times my dad would shut down. My dad would leave the environment. My dad would go out in the garage or down in the basement and make his fly fishing lures, or go clean something in the garage. And so I would see that as a little kid, and I'm like, oh, that's what a man does. When emotions start feeling this way, you get out of there. And there was never like this coming back in reconciliation to deal with what was going on. It was just avoid and get the hell out. And that gets so deep in our psyche, and it becomes so unconscious, and we don't realize, like, we think it's so normal to do that. But for women that are really in tune, like, they're looking for the completeness, the safety, the space where all of their emotions can be witnessed without that running away or shutting down or avoiding. And then because we're unconsciously playing that out, women are feeling super unsafe, and then so they shut down, and then they feel more distant. And because it's so unconscious, over time, when it keeps happening, the woman's starting to distance herself a little bit more and a little bit more. And through our logical brain, it's like, well, what do you mean? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything bad. So I think it's so powerful to have these conversations, and to really, when you look back on your childhood and you start thinking about these kinds of things, you might have memories come back of the way that your dad handled intense emotional instances, experiences, conflicts. And a lot, and my father as well, like he bottled stuff up. He let people kind of walk on him a lot of times. And so this all becomes my frame for life, right? And for so many men out there, this is the case. Or maybe they didn't have a father at all, and it was their mother trying to teach them that, which has its whole set of issues too. So yeah, we're really opening up this conversation because I know personally there's a lot of good men out there that really do care and really love their partner, their wives, the mother of their children, perhaps even. And to have that relationship fall apart because these unconscious aspects are occurring and they can't figure it out and get to the heart of the issue. We really want to speak awareness so that men can start to learn the tools, learn the protocols for like noticing when that kind of thing's going on inside of you, when you turn into the little boy emotionally, and then how to create that safe space, how to alchemize that within yourself so everybody feels safe in the environment, because it does, as you said, Chris, it starts with us. It starts with the man holding it down, holding that space, making it safe for everybody instead of relying on your partner, your woman to do that for you, which the unhealed little boy would want. He wants his mother to figure that out for him. And obviously the man as an adult doesn't want that, but when he turns into the child emotionally, again, it's all unconscious. So we're
Yeah.
just shining a light on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see because our most formative experiences and informative relationships, which at the foundation of it all is our mother and father or our caregivers, whoever that was. And these relationships is essentially what dictates how we experience our relationships later on in life. They always stem from these years. And like Sean was sharing, his experience with his father, and even for me, I'm a product of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 10. And, oftentimes what I would witness and what I would see, what I would feel, especially a very sensitive young boy, is two people that were completely disconnected, just not on the same page. I didn't really see the love and the care, the nurturance of any relationship. It was very much distant. And again, the avoidance tendencies or even the flare ups when everything, all of that is getting bottled. But just all of this is really stemming back to deep emotional suppression, which is essentially what we've been taught as men. And anytime we are suppressing or repressing any part of ourselves, especially our emotions, this is always going to come out in either defensive and reactive ways or in completely shut down and avoidant ways. And ultimately, this is going to create a inner sense of turmoil. So that being said, me and myself, Sean, learning all of these things from the behaviors of our own fathers and our own parents. And then just to see what my mother was, she was very much in her masculine, where, there were times where money wasn't great. And, ultimately our house was repossessed and had to leave that house. And my mom had to work two jobs, just her being in her masculine, right? So these polarities completely flipped. And over time, how that then manifested in my own relationships, especially early on, in my 20s and even into my 30s, of having these experiences where I would have a very difficult time having a difficult conversation, where I avoided it like the plague. And I didn't want anything to do with it. So just like, okay, walk this way. Everything's good. Keep the peace, whatever it is, people please, without having to have any conflict because I was terrified of it. Right. And then when conflict arose, feeling this, my protector part in me just flare up and want to guard my kingdom within and say, hey, this is not right. And I started to defend myself and react, and all of these loops that I found myself in. Now, ultimately, thankfully, gratefully, I've, been able to really learn where all of this not only stems from, but be able to really do the necessary inner child work, the shadow work, to be able to clear all of these attachment wounds, which were playing out in my relationships. And so that is something so important. So I actually like to speak a little bit deeper into that. And then when, kind of bridge here into, all right, so you might be noticing, and in this moment, I even invite you, the man watching this, to even, contemplate and reflect back on your own experiences. What has been some of the common themes that have been playing out in these patterns? And we're going to kind of reverse engineer this a little bit and speak into, okay, what does it mean to work with the inner child? What does it mean to work with the shadow? What does it mean to work with the nervous system? So, and how do these attachment wounds in relationships, whether it's anxious avoidant, it's anxious, it's avoidant, it's secure, which is very rare. This is what we're ideally moving into. But it all has to do with the relationship that you have with yourself. And if the relationship that you have with yourself is skewed, it's judgmental, it's always this inner critic going, and we are in this constant dialogue of hatred and negativity towards ourselves, this is ultimately going to create a very constricted, tense, closed down environment within ourselves. And therefore, that then leaks into our relationships where our woman or our partner, whoever that might be, is not really feeling that safety net of containment. Because as the masculine, we are here to create some level of containment, not control or possession. We're not talking about that, but containment for the river to flow. The feminine is the river. And we are here providing the banks to allow that, to lead that river and steer that river, rather than being caught in it, drowning in it, and all of that, which often happens. So let's, I'll pass it over to you again, and let's start into like maybe the inner child, and I think speak into that, because that's a really key part of this work that we do with men.
Yeah, such a big piece of this, and we've talked about this in other videos. It's reparenting, right? It's starting to become super aware of your emotional landscape and those emotions being attached to different parts of your psyche from different periods of your life. 5-year-old you, 8-year-old, 12-year-old, like, kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school, like so many, those are wildly different versions of you, right? And your intimate partner is always going to be the highest trigger points for the shadows formed during those periods, right? Because they took on a belief of themselves, of the world. Like for instance, for me, rejection was like one of the most painful things that I never wanted to feel, to the point where I would just avoid it as much as I could. And a vulnerable share, I guess, around that is I avoided like real committed, true relationships and like real love for 11 years. I didn't have a committed relationship for 11 years after my first one. That's a long time. It's a long gap. It was always like 6 months and out, or right when it gets to the point of like requiring real, true commitment, I would step out. Why? Because that little boy would kick in and he's like, whoa, you could, if you're going to open your heart this much and you're going to go down this road, like, remember what happens? There's a lot of pain there. Like you could be cheated on, you could be left and abandoned, like all of those things. So, these protectors, these archetypal protectors in our psyche are very strong and very powerful, but we're the space to become aware of them. Now, a lot of times for men, right, these emotional triggers come on and we go back to that age and we get swept up in the waters of that. And it's so powerful that we feel like we don't have control or a hold on it, and unconsciously we just get sucked in like a storm going on. We become the storm, and if we don't want to allow ourselves to get caught in that storm, we'll just run away, or we'll shut down, or we'll avoid, or we'll turn to our addictions to get away from that as quick as possible. And this is a time period now where we get to really, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. It's right. It's like, all right, what's the evolution of men right now? Like where are we going? What's the myth that's emerging? And to me, it's men becoming that safe space and doing their emotional work, which is reparenting, right? Which is you becoming the safe father figure, motherly figure for that little boy within you that's hurting. You can't skip this. You can't avoid it. You can't try to do something different. And, I think a lot of therapy comes short of this. It's like, what's going to really get in there and create change and allow you to be a safe space that your family, your partner feels like solid in. It's the level that you reparent yourself and the level that you, in the moment, while the most difficult trigger is there, can hold yourself through the eyes of compassion and love and kindness and witnessing and allowing. Most importantly, you're allowed to be here. It's not this get the fuck out of here like we're trained to do from our fathers and from our society and from our own fear of having to feel intense shit. It's like, hey, I'm going to sit here with you. It's okay. It's okay that you're afraid. It's okay that you think you're not good enough or someone's going to leave you. And so the degree that you can do that within yourself, it makes it way easier to do it for others, especially your partner. And you're not making it, it's not personal. You're not making it the story about you and what it means about you. You're in that more impersonal, observational place. And this is where I believe and see, because I've done it within myself, where men are being led to. And this is what's going to truly change our planet and make it a way more safe space, because there's not all these like traumatized, wounded little boys running around, because we know, dude, that can be fucking destructive. If there's unhealed teenagers and little boys running around, that's why we have the world in the way that it looks right now. That's really a result of that. So I'll hand it over to you, because there's, this is such a big thing and important that we kind of shine light on this.
Well, I think, you're alluding to this evolutionary factor where, we are being called to evolve. We don't have a choice right now but to evolve.
Yeah.
And, the world as we see it is, as Sean mentioned, a result of traumatized boys that haven't evolved emotionally past the age of 8 and now are enacting all of these things. And we see it in the dominance and the control and the destruction and the degradation of the planet, of the feminine, of all things. It is all because the shadow is running the show. And so, what is now, Sean really eloquently painted the picture of the inner child. And before we get into actually like a process of this, I think it's important to understand what's at the foundation here. And so the shadow would be the unconscious parts of ourself that have been hidden, suppressed, rejected, disowned, etc. And we all have these shadow parts, and what Carl Jung calls the shadow, and it's really the unlived self. It's the one that feels it's too much or too little or too small or whatever the case and story might be. But these are all stories we told ourselves based on the emotional reactions of our parents. So, for example, if we were having a big emotional reaction, such as maybe sadness or grief, or we were screaming and yelling, we were in rage, oftentimes those emotions were not acceptable in our household and therefore got shut down. And the more they got shut down, the more we didn't feel seen and heard. We decided to pull ourselves back and realize that there's a correlation that when I express XYZ, that this gets shut down, reprimanded, or punished. This is not a safe space. And so what do is I push it down, 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 down until it just completely becomes numb, and until one day it begins to explode out, because it ultimately will. You can only push things so far down before they have a reaction, right? And so what happens in a relationship when we get triggered, right? And one of my favorite quotes by Peter Crone is, relationships aren't here to make you happy. They're here to reveal where you're not free. And oftentimes, once we get beyond that honeymoon phase, right, that's when the shadows start to emerge from both partners, right? Not just men, but oftentimes the shadows start to arise. And this is where we either run away or things just become this convoluted mess because there's two hurt little boys and girls meeting each other in this space. And so, why we speak to this is because once we begin to go within to reparent through compassion, through grace, through forgiveness of our own little boy that's inside of us, that's when we can then meet those those experiences where there might be conflict arising, or there is this tension where we can meet it with presence. We can meet it with being fully there and attuned to what's actually happening versus trying to fix, defend, run away, and etc. And so, what happens when this actually gets put into practice? Well, of course, naturally, the relationship begins to take on a new tone. And it's through this we learn so much about ourselves. But it does require us to do this work, this inner work. It can't be avoided. Unless you want to stay trapped in the same cycles, unless you want to be in these addictive patterns, living the same life, this mediocrity, this plain small, all of these patterns that we see over and over again, you must come within oneself, right? And that inner child work, the shadow work combined is the way in which we begin to transmute and transform and alchemize all of this energy so that it works into the greater wholeness of who we are. And therefore, we begin to see our relationships improve. And so, I think a really important step here is like we could talk all day about these things, right? And we can
Mm,
have these conversations. And I think that's really important because we want to paint the picture here. But for me, I'm all about embodiment. I'm all about actually what does that actually look like? What is the process around that, right? And
mm,
so the first step, and I'll pass it over to you then, the first step in all of this is awareness, right?
yeah,
It's simply awareness and noticing what's happening. Number one, what's happening in the body when conflict arises or something comes up in the relationship. What do I notice in my body? And this may take a little bit to kind of get used to because we're used to numbing and moving from here down into here. And so, what am I feeling in my body right now when I want to run? Am I feeling this tension, this constriction, this tightness, this resistance? Notice where I'm actually feeling it. Where does those sensations arise inside of me? Oftentimes for me, it would come in, especially when I had to have a hard conversation, I'd feel a lot of fear and anxiety. It'd be in my solar plexus. And so
yeah,
it'd feel like this tight black ball of energy just like gripping at me. And I noticed through that then all of these all of this cortisol of emotion of fear and anxiety just rising within me. My body temperature would get warmer and warmer. And it would feel terrifying because in this moment, I could lose this person. And this is where then the deeper rejection wounds came up. Before we get there, number one is awareness. What's happening in the body? And what's happening in this moment? What is happening within this container of this relationship? Just drawing awareness to it. And the more you can step back just for a moment and to observe that, it may take some breaths, some time, and maybe just removing yourself for a moment and coming back to it. But awareness is always going to be the first step. And then we go deeper into that process. So if you want to take it over from there.
yeah. Just for myself, it's of course, yeah, that's the awareness, and then you would know this more than most people, right? It's for me too. It's like my breath. I'm holding my breath without realizing it. It's like, and then that energy just gets really intense, and you want to grab your phone, or you want to move it maybe in like a physical way. And that's the perfect time to what's really helped me is even just like putting a hand on my chest, like even just that touch of yourself, like to let your body know that you're there, to let that little boy in you that's again being expressed in the nervous system know that you're there, you're paying attention, and it's not the way that it used to be. And even just slowing that exhale is showing the body that there's safety going on.
Yeah.
And for me, this, because I've been practicing this for a long time now, there's this really wonderful intuitive voice that kicks in, that I choose to bring to this feeling that's going on. An example of it the other day, I had this conflicting energy with this older man, and it was in like a parking lot. It was over some stupid thing with a parking space, and I could feel myself tensing up. He had a loudness in his voice, and I immediately felt like I want to get defensive. I want to defend my position on this. Like, this guy's a threat, fuck him, blah, blah, blah. So it's like a mix of my scared little boy and like angry teenager that doesn't know how to handle it. So he wants to be like, fuck you, man. But instead I was just witnessing those two inside of me and observing his little boy / teenager going on, and without judgment. It was like this curiosity comes in, and I was saying to those parts within me, like, hey, you're okay. You're okay. I'm here. Nothing's going to happen to you. It's going to be fine. I'm like saying this to myself internally as this is going on. And even something like on the other side of that, I was getting a compliment from someone recently, and it was a big compliment. It was like these beautiful words. And I felt my breathing stop, and I felt like, and I wanted to just like go somewhere else or turn the voice note off or whatever. And that was another time where I took a breath, hand on the chest, and was like, hey, let this in. Receive this. Let it all the way in. It's okay. I'm teaching you a new way to handle these things with this energy that used to feel very uncomfortable. I'm teaching you now that it's safe to let it in. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? Like that, in that instance, I see myself kind of at the same time being a loving father and a mother. I'm like nurturing myself, and then the father is like guiding to like, hey, let this in. It's okay. You're safe. You're protected. You're fine. So this is what we mean by reparenting. I know this can feel weird at times. Like if you're newer to this, of like whether it's talking to yourself or holding yourself in this way, or this idea of you parenting yourself, and just notice that. Just be curious about that, of when maybe you're judging yourself, of like, what am I doing? Is this like, what is this? Is it working? Like, am I being a crazy person? Notice the judgments from the ego identity, right? That has existed outside of this for a long time. So non-judgment, curiosity. I think physical touch is really helpful. Leading yourself to a new place of experiencing, of like, hey, let's observe this, right? Because if you can't observe something, you can't sit with it, and then it owns you. And then we're slaves to our emotions. And then we try to control shit by wanting to fix it and bringing our intellect to it, right? How often do us as men just want to bring our intellect to these things? And that can't work. You can't meet something that requires intuition, a multifaceted, multidimensional way of handling a complex thing going on, and you try to bring your logic to it like our dads did, and especially to your partner, your woman, and she's like, fuck you. Like, that pisses her off and makes her feel less safe and makes her want to just, it's like, no, he doesn't get it. And then you get frustrated as a man because you're like, what do you mean? It's a very logical thing I'm saying. Yeah. But yet you're creating more distance and lack of safety. So these are just some of the practices, for me, that really help, that I've developed over time. And, in a professional setting, and, in our community and what we do in our retreats, like, it's very helpful and useful to have people guide you through this process, especially at first, because it's a lot newer. But then you can learn to start to do this within yourself. And that's when it starts to feel really good. And like the landscape starts to change. And all of a sudden you have that level of embodiment where you can be with this intense shit. You can be with someone who's got wild emotions going on without taking it personally or feeling like you're attacked and you're not safe and you need to do something about that. And then that neutralizes the energy. It grounds the energy. I used to do this when right before I was leaving Boston. Like everybody wants to fight, guys aren't getting laid, the energy's wild in their bodies. So they're like, I got to do something. I got to beat the shit out of somebody because they don't know what's going on internally. They're pissed that they didn't release that energy through sex. So we would just brawl on the street as guys. And I used to, when I started to really learn this stuff, I would play around with being the peacemaker. And I would see two guys in that energy and I would go over and ground it because I would ground it myself. And then I would see it disappear. And when the energy was grounded, they were like buddies again. Like, oh, we don't want to actually do that. So, this is powerful energy we're talking about with emotions, and really powerful ways to start to work with it. And instead of continuing the patterns of our fathers and being emotionally illiterate, because that's
Yeah.
leading us down a really dark road.
Yeah, and I think the core of it all here is just first and foremost learning how to feel. Because
Yeah.
if you don't know how to feel, which is very common for a lot of men, as I mentioned, as Sean mentioned, being stuck up in the mind, unable to actually feel the body itself, right? That is a process, and through breath work, which of course I promote and share and practice, is something that is a great way to get into the feeling state, into the somatic body. And this is where everything lies. The intelligence of the body is always communicating to us. And it's up to us to either listen or deny that. And so, that again, step one is awareness. Step two is feeling, going into the depth of that fear, going into the depth of that rage, going into the depth of that sadness. And generally, it's in that order: it's fear, rage, sadness. You go through the loops of that, and the fear is on the surface. Right beneath it is the anger and the rage. Right beneath that is the sadness and the grief. And if you are able to tune in deep enough, right, which again we have been told as men that any sort of feeling is off limits, that is not a safe thing by any means, because we're considered weak, or whatever the case might be. And so this is literally reprogramming your nervous system to actually come back into a baseline where it's number one, it's safe to feel, it's safe to express, and it's safe and it's okay to have these big moments within ourselves and these big feelings. It's okay that we're human, right? And as a part of human, we are merging both the masculine and feminine energies within us. And that does not make you less of a man. It actually makes you more of a man, because then you show up as a more grounded, empowered leader. And understanding how to actually control your emotions, not from a standpoint of a shadow, but actually being able to alchemize and channel them in a way that's constructive for you and your partnership. And so as you go into this, you might notice, just again, as Sean mentioned, some of these practices of just putting a hand on the chest, just noticing what and observing what the body is doing. There's no fixing, there's no changing. This is not about any of it. It's just simply bringing awareness to it. And then lastly, all of this is about a deep level of forgiveness. And because oftentimes we're holding ourselves in judgment, we go through the cycles, and then, oh, this is coming up again, now I'm judging it, I'm placing judgment on this, which actually keeps us trapped in the cycle. And so when we can bring compassion and forgiveness to ourselves, that, hey, we're doing the best that we could, we learn these things, our parents were doing the best that they could, they learn these things, and now here I am facing these things and allowing myself to move into the feeling state of this energy, and to ultimately transmute it, not only for myself, but for my family and all of the men and women that have gone through this. And this is the reclamation of self. And most importantly, it's the reclamation of both your masculine and your feminine harmonized in a healthy polarity and expression, which that is then moving into that heart space, for a man to be led by his heart and to be expressed in this way of being in this healthy level of feeling, that he can really bring together and experience a depth of power that not many men get to experience. And this is magnetic because anywhere you go and whatever you're leading, whether it's your business, your family, your relationships, this is really where all of your power lies. And you are no longer captive by the ego mind, but you are leading from that true place in the way of the heart. And this is really, what Sean and I share, teach inside of our inner circle and brotherhood is bringing these men back into the heart, opening the heart, and creating safety within. And from that place, we have seen time and time again men's relationships improve, their finances improve, their business improve, their relationship to their children improve. All of that as a result of this internal work. So just to kind of spell it out there, I think it's important to share that.
Yeah, beautifully said. I want to try to hit this home because it's such a powerful thing to know, right? It's like the and Jesus was a guy who, when he said to walk on water, that meant to walk on top of your emotions rather than getting owned by them. That's true mastery, where it wasn't about a guy physically walking on water. It's about being in control of your emotions by virtue of being the observer and not experiencing them, essentially. But what I wanted to say was, your heart, there has been so much pain in your life, in our lives. There's a society that is built on and designed to keep people disconnected from the heart, or emanating a signal that is very strong in lower vibrational energy. So it's like the heart is the quantum engine. The heart is the center point. The way that you feel about yourself, if you're being honest, if you're a man listening to this and you just like allow this period to be one of complete honesty, where it's like, how do I really feel about myself? How do I truly feel about my desires, about the way my life is going, about my job, my relationships? And you bring that honesty to your heart instead of the lies and the numbing and the avoiding. Like, we have every which way to numb ourselves and shut down our heart and not feel, with our phones, with porn, with drugs and alcohol. Everything is within arm's reach or right in our pocket. And meanwhile, we're at the biggest evolutionary period that any of us have ever seen. And this is all about coming back to the heart and realizing, like, your electromagnetic field, which is creating your entire experience here, is broadcasting what you're putting your attention on, the way that you feel about stuff. Are you feeling like you're a victim? Are you feeling powerless? Are you feeling depressed, helpless, shameful, unworthy? Guess what? Your heart is sending that out like waves in the ocean, ripples. And then you're getting more of that back. And then you wonder why you can't experience something different. So a lot of men, because they're unaware of this and their heart is shut down, or because they numb and they run away, they can't ever see coherence. Everything is incoherent because of what's being broadcasted from the heart, and the mind is feeding the heart fearful thoughts, shameful thoughts, and it's a cycle, as Christopher mentioned earlier. And so I really just want to hit home. This is, in what we do in our programs and what we do in our retreats, this is all about men coming back to their heart and getting honest with themselves and being like, wow, I have been reactionary. I've allowed my fearful ego mind to dictate the way that I feel and the thoughts that I'm having. And we've unknowingly submitted and been submersive to our programs doing that for us. This is all about, as men now, having this be a time where you reclaim your heart and you protect it and you honor it and you start to intentionally take care of it by virtue of prioritizing your peace, eating foods that open up your blood vessels, that support your heart, telling the truth, physical exercise, breathing intentionally, meditation to create space between your now and the reactions. All of these things are going to lead to a healthy, mature heart that you have agency over. And now your field's coherent when you change your focus and you start to dial this in. And that's when you're going to see the outer reality start to shift. This is the world we're living in now. This is the quantum space. This is our heart is an engine that is broadcasting our experience in this life. And we have to know that as men. We can't pretend like that's not there anymore. And that is full empowerment to know that and to not let those old programs and feelings tied to those tell you what reality is, tell you who you are. You are doing that now. That is true empowerment and authenticity, and what the new or evolved man is becoming. And it all has to do with the emotions and the way that you're holding your heart. You're not running away anymore. You're not avoiding and coping. You're right here. You're dealing with the triggers and the emotions going on within you. You're nurturing like the mother that maybe you didn't have. And then you're the loving father that's able to bring in truth to the distortion that was in the heart and in the mind. This is what we do with the guys in our programs, because this is what's more important than that. Like, we need a planet of men who are stepping into this place. And I was once a guy who just woke up and just was at the whim of the day, and whatever happened, and would be upset that my relationships weren't working out. And I, I was deep in victim. And now it's like, I feel this desire to like protect my heart, in the sense of I got to give it what it needs so that I can have the experience I want to have. So I wanted to highlight that, because it makes me emotional and even like weep when I see men that are disconnected from this truth and looping in the same cycle every day, and the relationships and families are breaking down. And it's like, it doesn't need to be that way anymore. And it starts with awareness and the willingness and the curiosity to look in places that you haven't. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really so many infinite possibilities that open from this place, really, where we can be deeply empowered within ourselves as men. And from there, the life that we get to create, design, lead, build, all becomes so magical and magnificent in all of these ways. And so, again, we can sit up here all day and we can share these things, and perhaps they resonate with you, and ideally they do in some level. But we can't obviously force you to do the work. That's up to you, and taking responsibility for yourself, and that's up to each and every one of us. But I could say firsthand, witnessing several hundreds of men do this work, uh, the profound shifts and changes in their lives is absolutely incredible to witness. And, this is how ultimately we are going to create a completely new paradigm on this planet, where war and destruction and domination, all these things, they don't have to be the common way. That we can move out of the darkness and into the power of our own light. And we get to all do that, and it starts with us as the individual, and then ultimately manifests in the collective sphere. But right now is the time that this planet needs us connecting with the earth, being out in nature, connecting with ourselves. And ultimately this is going to have a ripple effect in our families and our communities, and ultimately in the world and the earth itself. So with that being said, any of you men that are listening to this message that feel this call and this resonance with what Sean and I shared today, the spaces are open. We have the Brotherhood online on School. You can hop in. We have 2 monthly calls. It's an incredible group of men. And we also have our in-person retreats. And one coming up this June 2026. If you're watching it beforehand, if not, you can go down below this video and click the links to our upcoming retreats. And Yeah, they're just really this is the time. It's go time. It's now. So can't wait to see you all there.
Yeah, this is it's a time to get out of your comfort zone, do shit you haven't done, and dive in. And the support of being around other men who are doing that, I believe it's a necessity right now. So if that spoke to you in any way, join us for one of the in-person retreats. Join our community. You know, you can't say that you don't know where to go for this stuff. It's like it's here, and it just requires you to say yes to it. So the invitation is here for you guys, and um it's an honor to get to walk this path with other men who are connected to that vision and wanting to go to those deeper places within themselves.
And the last thing I'll share here is that naturally the self saboteur is going to come up. There's going to be the resistor. There's going to be the protector.
Oh yeah.
All of these parts are going to come up. We see it time and time and again with men. So I want to speak directly to that part of you that is going to feel that resistance, that tension, that fear, that self saboteur. That is the natural part of the process. But when you can lean into that and meet your edges in that way, you become even more powerful because you're saying yes to yourself and you're overriding the ego. You're overriding these parts of yourself that have kept you small in a space of complacency and mediocrity for so damn long. So if you are ready, I know you're ready. If you're listening to this message, it's time to step in and step up. We're rising together.
Let's go.